Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Wonder Woman 1984. I came into this movie, after a long fun day of Christmas, having a great time, this being kind of a night of Christmas kind of movie, and I decided, to have a beer, have some whiskey, have some fun with it. I wanted to see a big blockbuster. During this whole COVID time, I haven't really seen that many big blockbusters, and this film is not really an exception to a lot of them in that it is a big old mess. But I had a lot of fun with this big old mess, which most of the time I watch a blockbuster, I don't. I usually I get bored, don't like it, and get really disinterested. But for some reason, and maybe it's because I was a little drunk, maybe it's because it was just fun to see this type of movie again. Maybe it was also because Patty Jenkins certainly had a bit of charm in her direction over the kind of movie she was going to make. Because this is very much trying to be an 80s Wonder Woman movie. In the way it's shot, in the way its score is, it is very much using the style of an actual 80s movie. Not what we're used to with 80s nostalgia with like synth music and, Duran Duran, all those, Stranger Things, all that stuff. She was very much doing kind of the classic what was big at a science fiction convention in 1984 kind of stuff, and mainly setting on like Richard Donner Superman, Quantum Leap, cheesy as hell kind of shots, even the 70s Wonder Woman. I think it was a choice. I'm like 100% sure. I watched a lot of Sci-Fi Channel in the late 90s where they replayed a lot of that stuff. I'm willing to guess Patty Jenkins either did or watched a lot of those shows on its first run. I don't know how old she is, but I could tell she likes that period. She has kind of a real love for it. This is almost the biggest love letter to Richard Donner Superman and that kind of 80s filmmaking I've seen since Bryan Singer's Superman Returns. And this is probably just as messy. To be honest, I know this movie probably isn't good in any traditional sense. And even when I watched it, I knew it was not as good as the original Wonder Woman. It is definitely, I guess, maybe a step down for the franchise. I don't think it's as universal as the first one. I don't think it would be in the pantheon of great superhero movies. But as someone who pretty much saw any movie that had a superhero or any sort of comic book adaptation pre, Spider-Man and X-Men coming out, I found this film kind of refreshing because it reminded me of that stuff. Were they good adaptations? Fucking no at all. But it was just fun to see your characters on the big screen kind of thing. And it kind of reminded me of one of those in a way that seemed like someone who actually loved that period in a way. I don't really understand fully what Patty Jenkins was thinking making this sort of a messy blockbuster where basically the villain of the piece is like a copycat superhero thing, which we've seen a million times, and then a guy who wishes for a million wishes. But I can tell she was having fun with it. There's a lot of 80s issues it doesn't deal with, even though they're granting all these people wishes. I'm sure like no one in 1984 would ask for a cure for AIDS or to help the crack epidemic or something like that. They only slightly get into serious issues with the whole Egypt destroying, land and stuff thing. But other than that, it really doesn't try to do that, even though 1984 was actually a very serious time, to be honest with you. It was not just a silly, fun, like peak of humanity, everything was going great time, only for a certain amount of people. But this film kind of doesn't really want to get into 1984. Why name it that? It has nothing to do with George Orwell, but it wasn't about 1948. That's the twist, kids. I don't really know why. I guess I like this. I mean, it's just like, Wonder Woman has always wanted Steve Trevor to come back. You see a lot of people wishing they could have more, and then as soon as they are granted with this special amulet, that the world kind of falls apart because not everyone can have the magical American dream because obviously everything would fall apart. Are they saying something about that? There could be an environmental message there, but like, how most Hollywood blockbusters do, they sort of bring those things up but don't actually, want to deal with them because that would be lame. This movie is just so goofy and silly, and there's certain elements I liked, and there's certain elements I clapped at and had a good time with. I think there should be something said for a movie that is a complete utter fucking mess that I find actually entertaining, because I see so many of these blockbusters where it's like trying to be like, no, I know we're a mess, but we are entertaining. And usually it's just like them just like throwing crap at the wall, but it's different when you can tell there's a theory behind them just throwing crap at the wall. And that's really what you're getting with Wonder Woman 1984. There are exact shots that are definitely like look like they're from an 80s movie. The score is trying to be an 80s movie, but not in a cool way. It's basically being an uncool 80s movie. And I'm sure for most of you who didn't have to just sit through a bad 80s movie to get like a little glimpse of science fiction in it, this movie is probably not appealing to you because you didn't have to suffer through that. Frankly, I would say you're a fake fan because of it. But I would also say I think this is a very geared towards like movie that just looks like it was something that would play on the Sci-Fi Channel during their like superhero marathon or something, and you just be like, sure, why not, I guess. And you know, you sit there and go, I guess that was fun, and then you never see it again. I will probably never see this movie again. It's not like the first Wonder Woman, which I've seen a slew of times, I've introduced to my daughter, everything like that. This is not one of those. It was pretty clear, you know, this is way too long, there's way too much going on. I don't understand why you have Cheetah in this and you don't introduce her properly. I don't really know Maxwell Lord, but like, doesn't the metaphor not really work? If it's Pedro Pascal, wouldn't it work if it was like a white guy? It doesn't seem like he gets in any trouble, despite the fact that wouldn't everybody know who he was, so how could he go anywhere? The film just sort of doesn't deal with that, so we're going to assume maybe someone arrested him at some point. I'm not exactly sure what happened, how she got everyone to relinquish their wishes. Did she use the lasso of truth? Is that what happened? I have no clue. Maybe I just spoiled something. Who cares? I've seen enough of these DC movies. I've seen all the EU or whatever it is. Most of them that are a mess, I don't like. They're not good movies. I don't care what you think of Zack Snyder or whatever. It's like, he's not a good director. In Wonder Woman 1984, it's like a mess I just sort of fell in love with. I had a good time. It was a nice way to end a nice holiday sort of thing. And I think, you know, Gal Gadot, I thought, did a decent enough performance. I like the kind of quantum leap thing they do in it. I like the references to the other one. I'm sure it is trying to do the exact same thing in a sequel, which is not like, you know, as lame as people make it out to be. To me, it just, that sounds like how you would actually make a sequel in the 80s. I was a little curious, like, why take this different take on it? Why actually make a film that looks like it's in the 80s, whereas the first one was just sort of like our modern interpretation of World War I, not shot like a World War I movie. It didn't reference any of the silent cinema that was about World War I, and there's quite a bit of it. And this one took a different approach. I'm assuming because Patty Jenkins, not to be calling out her age constantly or something, but I'm assuming because she grew up with more of the kind of movies, it felt like she wanted to almost make like a better version of Superman 3 or something. I think that was an interesting way to take it. It almost makes me wish this franchise had picked different decades and had been shot more in the style of that decade. And Richard Donner was all over the 80s. I could tell things from that kind of cinematography, that way it's shot. It felt like if they had, you know, inspiration book, they had, you know, frames from The Karate Kid, they had frames from War Games, you know, everything like that. This is probably more like an actual average 80s movie than all these movies that really push 80s nostalgia and rub it in your face. And maybe that's what people wanted more from this. I think this is definitely like a weird approach to take after you have this big, gigantic movie that appeals to multiple generations. I feel like this is probably one of the big all-encompassing 4-quadrant kind of films, and I don't think this is that movie, and I think that's probably what doesn't work about it. It's like a messy auteur kind of film that you know, you're like, this is the movie I really wanted to make, and no one really thought about the story necessarily. I mean, even the running thing, I was like, oh my god, that's straight out of the Linda Carter show. That is amazing. I was like, I loved it. I was like, this is great. But I can tell when everyone's being dark and broody and things like this, they're not gonna like that. Maybe it's just a movie and we should all just relax sometimes. And I don't think this film is controversial in any sense of the word. It's not trying to be. It probably should be more, because it doesn't tackle real issues that we still have social and cultural and actual ramifications from, that this film probably could have dealt with in a more healthier way. Regardless of that, and I notice no one's really gotten upset about that either, so, you know, I see where your true values lie. As a superhero film, I appreciate what it's doing, because it's one thing to kind of fail and try to be embarrassed over your superhero thing. This, like, took the reverse and, like, did, what were the 80s movies about superheroes like? I'm like, oh, they were bad? Well, that's what we're doing, I guess. Having Kristen Wiig in it, I didn't really mind her that much. I don't think she was amazing. I felt like sometimes there are real character moments that they cut away from really quickly. There's certain things that are, like, disturbing and darker. It makes me wonder about Patty Jenkins. This feels like, you know, a big director kind of ego kind of movie in a way we really don't get to see from female directors. So, hey, progress, I guess. But it's just not good, but it is good to kind of sit back with and kill 2 hours after, a long day of a lot of family stuff, and you just kind of want to sit on the couch and veg out. And that's what this movie did for me. If I saw this in the theater, maybe I would be a lot more disappointed. I just think there was a real love of filmmaking and 80s filmmaking and fun going on in this mess. And a lot of times I just smell the cynicism of it and the studio notes and a director trying to artistically do something that they can't really carry the weight of, and everyone telling me how it's important and stuff. And I just don't ever see it. And I have to hear constant conversations about it that I don't really give a shit about because I've forgotten about the movie, and why are you still talking about it? I don't want to talk about this. In a month, I'm not going to think about this movie. And you really shouldn't. It's not that good. But for a fun mess of a thing, I had a good time. I know it's not a great movie, and I have no business ever really watching it again. But I support Patty Jenkins making a fun, messy blockbuster that referenced things that, hey, at least I got. I liked the Quantum Leap stuff. I liked the mall fight, the 80s thing. I liked various little moments of it. I think it was sort of referencing Alien from LA a little bit. I'm fine watching this mess once and moving on. I think that's really the attitude with Wonder Woman 1984. I don't think this is a positive review because I'm basically telling you this is not a good movie, but sometimes it's fun to have a good time with a bad movie, and it's fun watching a director sort of pour their heart and soul into something that entertains you even if it doesn't work. And I don't know if this movie works. Maybe this isn't the great sequel that Wonder Woman deserved, but it was what it got, and it was a lot of fun to witness. I hope if they get to make another one together, Gal Gadot and Patty Jenkins, they're able to make, the great Wonder Woman movie everyone wants. Maybe this was just the sequel Wonder Woman movie that only I and a few weird people enjoy, but whatever. We can have fun and stuff. I just never really speak of it again. Maybe this is the Supergirl of Wonder Woman movies. Yeah, that's probably not what we should have gotten, but that is what we got. And from what we got, I'm sort of just happy with this random ass mess. I still just sat back and had a decent enough time on my couch one Christmas night with Wonder Woman 1984. And as being a big, disposable corporate machine kind of blockbuster that's supposed to distract me from the real issues, I guess it did a decent enough job. So if you've seen Wonder Woman 1984 and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.